All right, I'm going to walk you through just kind of where to start in your math class. Now I know that this class that we're looking at is Algebra 1. It's going to be very similar depending, just no matter which class you're in, so we're just going to use this as an example. So I always want to log into Blackboard and start on my home page. I want to read any announcements that I have, which this is our announcement from last week so that I know I'm good and a good place to go. I always start with looking at my class calendar. Okay, so the first thing I see that this week, we're starting week 2 right here, I'm working on the beginning of chapter 1, and I work all the way through chapter 1.4. On Tuesday, I know that we have live class. If you're in Algebra 2, that's on Wednesday, and so I know in live class we'll be working on this part together, so I don't really have to do a whole lot right now. But I really want to start here on Monday. I see I'm working on the opener for chapter 1 and this 1.1, solving simple equations. So then I want to go ahead and log into Big Ideas, which I've already done here, and I see a screen that looks something sort of like this. So all of the information that I need will be in this website or on Blackboard. One really cool thing that I want to use right now is my Student Dynamic ebook. So when I click on that, it opens up my ebook, and I make sure I have the right book picked. And I know that I'm working on chapter 1, so I could pick through every page to find the right place, or I can just go directly to chapter 1. And we're looking at 1.1, solving simple equations. So this is the same exact thing that you'll see if you're using your physical textbook or if you're using this online resource. I like the online resource because I can use the highlighter and I can take some notes and bookmarks and those kinds of things. But sometimes it's really handy just to have that physical textbook. So I know I'm working through section 1.1 today. So first thing I want to do is I want to read through everything. I want to find my essential questions. Look through these explorations. The first thing you really want to do is, I know they say work with a partner. However, if you're at home by yourself, you don't really have a partner. So go ahead and do this by yourself, using a protractor to measure, and measure as close as you can. There are really cool ways to get online and do this as well. So if you click this little button, it should open up a program called GeoGebra. Okay, so I just made this page a little smaller again so I can click on this button right next to it so I don't have to print out the page, and I can use this really cool tool, it's called GeoGebra, to actually measure these angles. So you'll see here I have my little protractor that I can use, and I can click and drag it where I need it to go. So if I'm using my online book, I can use the tools that are given to me here. If I have the physical book, I can actually get my protractor out and measure it. Either way is just fine. So I go back to my book, and I know that I'm just supposed to measure all the angles and copy them into a table. Just make a quick table in your notebook is all you really have to do. One big thing to keep in mind is while you're reading through this, if you see bolded words that are highlighted, those are going to be your vocabulary words, so definitely write those down. So once you fill out and go through these explorations, we're just going to move on to the next page. So the key things here when we start our sections is what you will learn. This part up here at the top. These are going to be our learning targets. Okay, this is what you really need to have in your notebook because we need to know why we're doing what we're doing. So in this section, you'll learn how to solve linear equations using addition and subtraction. You'll be able to solve linear equations using multiplication and division, and then use linear equations to solve real-life problems. Now these learning targets, these what you will learns, will be something I'm looking for when I do our notebook checks. So make sure that you know exactly where they are, and so that we can refer back to them. Okay, so then I'm just going to start reading through and taking notes. And my example, my note-taking example of this exact section will be posted in your class as well under class information. So you can go through and see what important information I took out of this whole section and how I kind of organized my notes. One thing you want to, again, make sure you note is all of these vocabulary words that are bolded and highlighted. Then the other thing is these core concepts. These are going to be the things that you're coming back to over and over again. These are different properties that we're going to be using. These are different equations that you'll need to know. So these are the big, huge things that you will absolutely need to know. Okay, and then we have just our normal examples. So one thing is make sure that you have these examples and that you know why you're doing each step. That's why these examples are here. So if you get stuck and you're like, man, I'm not really sure, I'd like a video example, if you click on this little blue button right next to the example, it'll pull up a video. And now this video will walk through not the example given in the book, but an example very similar, and it'll talk you through all the steps. So there's multiple ways that you can look at this. So then we keep going and we're taking our notes. Again, I see this core concept, so I want to make sure that this is in my notes, and you can see how I did this in my notes, that it has a different color and a box around it, just so that I can be able to find it very quickly in my notes. And I'm going and I'm taking my notes, and here's my real life examples, right? And I remember that that was one of my learning targets, was using equations to solve real world examples. So I know that this is talking about that learning target, so I need to pay attention here. Okay. So then once I get here, I'm still going through my modeling with mathematics. I have this fourth example, some problem solving strategies, some number lines, and I can keep going. I get to these exercise pages. So here's where we're going to use the other part of the Big Ideas website. You can do these in your notebook just like this, and even if you use this website, you're going to be writing things in your notebook. But here's what I want you to see. In your Big Ideas site, if you click on your Assignments tab, you'll see that I've assigned a bunch of different assignments to you. Now these show up starting the week before they're actually due, so you have time to look at them. But I know that I was working on section 1.1, so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. The cool thing about using this website rather than doing it on paper is I'm able to check my answers, so I know that if I'm doing the problems right or wrong, and I can fix that before I have to take the quiz. Now remember, your homework is not a right or wrong kind of grade. You'll get a grade for your homework as if you do it or not. So I really highly advise using this system because it will help make sure that you're getting it right before you take the quiz where the grade actually counts. So then I can hit start. So I know I'm supposed to match each operation with its inverse. And I can just click and drag these different things. And I'm doing this one wrong on purpose so I can show you. So then I know that I answered how I think, and I hit check answer. Oh, I wasn't quite right, so I can change some things. Change my answer to what I think is correct this time, and now check answer, and I see that I was completely correct. So I can continue on and make sure I answer all of my questions, right? And I just click and drag. And if I want to leave it wrong, I can. However, that's not really going to help you when you get to your quiz. We need to know how to do these things correctly. So one cool thing on this too is you don't have to go in order. If you know that you were stopped on question number 11, you just click on that button and then click to where you need to be. How you can keep track of where you are in the book is I know this is question number 11 in this resource. However, up here in this gray bar, it tells us where it is in the book. This is the same problem as number 18 in the book. So I can use both of my resources to help me. And here I have to actually type in some numbers, and I can use my keyboard or I can use the numbers here that they give me. And I know I was wrong, so I would have to go back. If you answer problems incorrectly and you need help, you can click on this Need Help button, and it will pull up your video tutorial. You can review the lesson. So this will just take you to the page in the book where this information was taught, or you can watch the video about this example. Now remember that on these homeworks, that's a great thing to do because the whole idea of homework is to get it so you are comfortable with the material and you know how to solve the problems. So when you see them on the quizzes, you're ready to go. So I can keep going through and check my answer and keep answering the problems. And now that I've gone through and I've finished all of them, and I know I'm right because I've checked my answer, I still need to, first I'm going to save. And my big advice is to save your problems every probably 3 or 4 answers, just so that if the internet goes down or your computer freezes, you'll have at least saved all the work you've done so far. But I'm done here, so I want to go ahead and hit submit. And it'll make sure you want to submit and go ahead and hit yes. But only do that once you're totally done and ready for me to grade it. So it'll take a second, and now it tells you, woohoo, you finished. So here's my incorrect answers. And I knew that that was happening because I just did this quickly, and my overall score. On your homework, your section exercises, this should always say 100% because you've had time to check your answers and review your work. So I can go ahead and return back to my assignments. So now that I've done that assignment, you'll see that it's disappeared from my assignments page. It's now over in my reports page. This is just a good place that you can go and see how you've done on things. You can always go back once you've submitted it and review all of your work. So this will be a really good thing once we get closer to taking some unit exams, that you still have all of your answers here that you can review. And it'll just show everything that you've done and show you all the right answers. Okay. One thing I want to make sure and note, that while you're doing these homework assignments on the computer, that you're actually doing the work in your notebook. I should be able to see, when I do our notebook checks, some worked out examples, see the problem, see you try a couple of things, and checking your work. That's the biggest thing, is checking your work. When we have a quiz, and you'll see quizzes by this blue box, you will not have the check answer option available, because this is where we actually test what we have learned by doing these different exercises. So one thing I've noticed as a teacher, I cannot change the order in which these show up for you. So the biggest thing is to always go back to your class calendar and make sure that you're on track. So I know Monday I was supposed to complete section 1.1. So now that I've gone through and I've taken the notes, I've written down my learning targets, I've completed the exercises, I'm going to do my one final thing for this class, for this part of my notebook, and that's complete my 3-2-1 reflection. So now that I've finished with this section 1.1, I'm going to go through and fill out my 3-2-1 reflection. And I'm going to do this for every section. Okay, so here's what the sheet looks like. And you don't have to print this out, or just do it in your notebook, and you'll see where mine is in my notes example. First, I have to come up with 3 things I learned in this chapter. A great place to go to figure out those 3 things is back at our learning targets. So when I'm back on my book, right, remember, and I told you needed to write these down in your notes, is your learning targets, or as they're called in the book, what you will learn, right here. Here's our 3 things. Were you able to learn these 3 things? Can you do them without a lot of assistance? That will help us, and that can be part of our 3 things I learned. So that's the 3. The 2 things I'm still struggling with. What is tough? Is it still taking notes? Are we having trouble remembering subtraction or addition? And then one thing that will help me tomorrow. So this should be the last page of that section in your notes, and you should see that in my note example. So once I've done all of these, I can go back and check in my class calendar, and I see that I'm done for Monday. And I know that tomorrow in class on Tuesday, we're going to be working on this 1.2. So continue following these same steps every day as we work on. When you have a day that says a quiz, make sure you spend a little time before you take the quiz studying and reviewing, so that you are ready to go as soon as you take that quiz. And as always, if you have questions or anything comes up, please don't hesitate to ask me. So please contact me with any questions that you have or anything that I can help with. And keep looking for more of these video announcements to keep you rolling in class.